Hi, welcome to Talk About the Passion. I'm your host, Christian Campagna, and my guest today is Dana Bollen. Dana is a fellow podcaster who also works as a tour manager for bands like Piebald and Unearth. In this conversation, we talk about how he went from being a fan of Piebald to them asking him to manage a tour, how important travel is, and also I ask him what some of the worst things you can do when approaching a merch table at a show. This was my first time meeting Dana. We have a few mutual friends, and he's also a North Shore guy. For those outside of the area, that's north of Boston, places like Lynn, where he's from, Swampscott, Marblehead, Beverly. And yeah, it's on the shore, north of Boston. So we had plenty to talk about. Dana has some great philosophies on life and work ethic, and his podcasts 2 Week Notice and Live Free or DIY are done because he loves the work. This was a natural and laid-back conversation, thanks to Dana being a good storyteller and an interesting guy to talk to. Definitely check out his podcasts, and please enjoy this conversation I had with him. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, so you don't miss an episode. I am on social media, mostly on Instagram as Caffeine and Cookies, all one word. And there's also a Talk About the Passion podcast Instagram as well. Also, this is episode 99 of this podcast, and I'd like to thank everyone who has liked, commented, followed, discussed, or shared this podcast since my return a few months ago. And I'd especially like to thank all the guests I've had on since I started this back up, and obviously everyone who was on here before as well, aside from that one guy that time. I look forward to doing more of these, and number 100 should be a fun one, and it will also be one that's just me talking, and it's going to be another video episode, video and audio. Oh yeah, I'm doing video episodes now. If you search Talk About the Passion on YouTube, Talk About the Passion podcast, you'll find my channel. If you just search Talk About the Passion on YouTube, you'll find the REM song, which is a fine song. Enough about all of this. Let's get to episode 99. Thanks for listening, and thanks, Dana, for coming on to talk. So I'm here with Dana Bollen. Thanks for coming on here. And you yourself, you have a couple different podcasts, correct?
Yeah, dude. Well, first of all, Christian, what's up, dude? We haven't met until this moment.
Yeah.
Over the Zoom. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course.
Yes. I do have a couple of podcasts. I first heard your show. You had Buzz McGrath from Unearth, our mutual buddy, a few years back, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that was the first one I heard. Okay. And, listened to a few since. And so I was subscribed to your show, and you hadn't put anything up for a while. And I saw you pop back up, like a couple months ago or something. And I was like, oh shit, he's back. Cool. So I listened to that. And first of all, I just appreciate your passion for music. Hence the title, I guess.
Yeah.
You're like clearly I consider myself a big time music fan, but maybe you more than me. Right. It's cool. So I dig that vibe.
Thanks.
And you said at the end of the show, like, oh, if you or you know someone who wants to come on the show, reach out. So I got this thing I'm promoting, so I was like, let me hit him up. Why not?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem, man. And so you have the first one you have is 2 Week Notice, and you've been doing that for a while. And the format of that is talking to people. Is it mostly talking to other people?
Yeah, it's much like yours. Mm-hmm. Like when you do your interviews, Yeah. So it's called 2 Week Notice. It started as a travel log, but it has, during the pandemic, it morphed into me interviewing musicians. So like I've also had Buzz. Mm-hmm. I've also had Trevor from Unearth. So I think we might have a couple other crossover guests.
Yeah,
but
I feel like we might have, yeah.
So I interview musicians in the scene, hardcore, punk, emo. I mean, we're both Boston kids.
Yeah.
I'm from Lynn, Mass. You're from Swampscott?
Yeah. My family's from, I grew up in Nahant, and my mother's from Lynn, and, I had relatives in Lynn and Swampscott. But yeah, I'm the North Shore guy. And then you have a newer one called Live Free or Die podcast?
So it's Live Free or DIY.
Okay.
But it is, Live Free or Die is like the New Hampshire state slogan. And I totally ripped that off. That's where I got the idea.
Right.
I'm in my I got a little ski spot in New Hampshire. That's where I'm at
nice.
right now, up in the White Mountains. But yeah. So going back to 2 Week Notice real quick. Yeah. So I just interview musicians in the scene. It's like, going back to the Boston roots. Like, I tour with Piebald. I tour with a lot of bands, but that's like the first band that really got me into all this. They're from Andover. I tour with Unearth now when I can, if I'm not like committed to another tour. So, yeah, just people in that scene, I've had like, I don't know if all of these are, people like you're hardcore, but within, I just call it the scene, right? You put there's emo, there's punk, there's hardcore. Right. So like I've had like Chris Carrabba from Dashboard Confessional, or like Buzz from Unearth.
Yeah.
And, or the Piebald guys or whatever. So I feel weird coming right out the gate doing a plug. Sorry, but
no.
So that's that, and then the new one is it's I don't know. You want me to talk about it now?
Yeah.
All right. So Live for Your DIY. This has been like my passion project over the last year, really. So this music professor from Northeastern University, he hit me up. He found me through 2 Week Notice, and also the Furnace Fest community. Do you know what Furnace Fest is? Down in Birmingham.
Yeah.
Best festival.
Some crazy. Yeah. It's always a crazy
It's
lineup,
insane.
Right?
Yeah. I don't know if you've seen the videos. One of the stages is in like this shed. It almost looks like an airplane hangar or something.
Yeah, it's crazy, right?
I
watch all those videos. Yeah.
Dude, it's like the hardcore arena. That's where they put all like the heavy bands. That's where Unearth plays,
Yeah.
So he hit me up through that community because there's a Facebook group, and he's like, I got some funding from the university, and I would love to start like this podcast, and I would love to work with you. And I was so like slammed at the time. I was on a kind of a brutal run of 5 tours, like back to back to back to back, and just like right in the middle of that, and I was so tired and already backed up on 2 Week Notice, which I still am.
Right.
So I just like didn't have the time for it. But like I hopped on Zoom with him and like so he could pitch it to me. And by the end of that meeting, I was just like, all right, dude, I'm in. And I don't get paid for 2 Week Notice. Yeah. So the paid part like really helps, and not even just financially between tours, like, but like also, not to like pat myself on the back or whatever, but to see something come of this other podcast that I've been working so hard on for 5 years or whatever. Yeah. It meant so I didn't even know how much money yet. And I was just like, wow, like somebody wants to pay me. Like, so this does mean something, what I'm doing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
You get it, dude.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right. So basicly it's a
lot of work.
It's so much work. And then this one was even more because we have a panel of 12 people who are in the scene, a lot of musicians, but also like, show promoters, festival promoters, music professors. Yeah. We got a videographer. So we try to get like people from all different walks of the DIY music scene life. And basically like, instead of having each person get their own episode, we asked all 12 people like the same series of questions. And then each episode has a theme. And we pulled clips from all the interviews and put them into each episode in relation to the episode's theme. And then the professor and I do like voiceovers in between.
That's a cool idea, man.
Dude, it's been cool. But like, I think the professor, the point in him paying me all this money was so that I think the way he envisioned it was when it was time to do voiceovers, he would just hop in, knock it out, and be done, because he's super busy too. Right. But it turned into this whole thing. Like we split up the interviews, so we each did the 6, so that took time. But then like, we spent hours upon hours of Zoom sessions, like listening to all the clips together, coming up with the themes, and like all right, which clips are we going to use? Right. And building the episode. All right, which order should we put them in? Right. All right. So here comes the voiceover part now. So we're not talking over each other. What do we say? Which was new to me as a podcaster. I'm used to like your format, just
like a one-on-one. Yeah.
So it's like, oh man, and so which is funny because I thought I would be really good at doing those recordings. I kind of punished this dude because
Yeah.
if I have to think about it, what I'm going to
Yeah.
say, I would fuck it up. So
Yeah. You
like, all right,
overthink it.
yeah,
Yeah.
all right, let's try that one again. Or maybe he wouldn't do the best take, and I'd be like, you
Yeah.
know what? I think you could do it better. Try that again.
Yeah.
So it was just like this long process.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with it, man. I poured my heart and soul into it, and even when I thought I was like done, and technically like I got paid, I'm done, but now like as you and I are talking, we're right in the middle of this launch. So it's like I got 2 episodes out so far, and we're just gonna put out one a week until it's done, which is only 4 more weeks. But like, I'm creating Instagram reels, which takes a few. It's not as long as a whole audio hour episode or whatever, but it fucking takes forever, and that's a learning curve for me. And then it's like I'm making YouTube videos and just like posting on the socials takes, but before you know it, you've been like trying to make this post and like an hour goes by, and then like people start reacting to it, and then it's like I'm trying to engage with the. It's just, and again, I don't have to do all that, but when you create something, and you pour everything you got into it, you want to share it with the world. Not that it's about the downloads, but it's, as it's hard to get people to listen to your show. There's so many great podcasts out there, and bad ones. There's just a million podcasts. So
yeah, I know. I saw a thing recently that said, "Don't tell your family or friends about your podcast," and he was more kind of talking about just, your family and friends. It's almost like fake downloads because they're obviously gonna download it and tell you it's great. Most of the time.
Yeah.
So. And I love the engagement from my friends and family, but it is cool when just strangers like you, reach out to you or tell you that they enjoyed an episode. That's what it's all, you get one of those and it makes it all worth it,
100%, dude. That's the way I see it. Like making the YouTube is like its whole own animal. And I already kind of can't keep up with it. So I'm not using the video of the people talking, but I'm making like a slideshow.
Yeah.
So if like someone talks about, brings up, Newbury Comics, I'll put up a slide of Newbury Comics, or Bridge 9 Records. I'll put up a thing of Bridge 9 Records, or if they name like on certain nights of Columbus Hall. So just trying to go through that, and just because I feel like even with 2 week notice, like I have a YouTube, but I don't utilize it at all because it's just so much work. But that is something I feel like I'm leaving on the table. Like that's a platform that a lot of people use to listen to podcasts. I don't even think everyone necessarily watches the video. I think
they use the audio. Yeah,
totally. So
yeah,
I've been trying to like do that, just trying to do all these things with this new project that I learned, through 2 week notice, stuff I should be doing or stuff that I didn't figure out until like later. So this actually, it made me even a better podcaster, to be honest. But like, I don't know. It's like, how far down this rabbit hole do you want to go and how much time do you have? And so, but I think the YouTube video has, the one I put up has like maybe 40 views. It's like, all right, if one person got into this show and like get something out of it from me doing that, then it's worth it.
Yeah, right.
So
in the idea and the concept of that show, DIY, how important is that in your life and your career and just how you live your life?
That's a great question, man. Well, I mean, I'll say, even just through this podcast itself, the term DIY already has a new meaning to me than it maybe did before. Like, so going like all the way back, when I think DIY, I think back to growing up in the Highlands in Lynn on Cook Street, which is rugged, man. It's the hood up there.
Yeah.
And, my dad worked at GE in Lynn, and like when he wasn't working, he was always like doing something with that house. He built an addition on the house when, I don't know, early, not like 1992. I was like 7. And I just always remember during the summers, he was like building a deck or like adding to the basement, like laying foundation or like painting or, just remodeling or turning a little closet into a half bath. And just like this, the guy can he can do anything. Like, I don't have that brain. He could fix anything. He can figure out how to, like, yeah, he could probably build a house if he
Yeah.
needed to.
Those GE people, I had relatives. I think all of us like around the North Shore probably had I had two uncles and my grandmother worked at GE in Wilmington, but yeah, I had one in Lynn, and so that was a big thing for
Oh,
all of us.
dude, huge. I mean, in the, what, 100 years ago, in 1920s or something, or through like World War II for sure, it was huge.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean they built, so for listeners' sake, it's not GE like the appliances. It's a place that builds, jet engines for the wars and shit. So, like, I mean, my dad was a welder, iron worker, so yeah, I mean, it was this massive. It was like its own little city almost, within the city, and created so many jobs. But a lot of people in my family have worked there. He was always trying to get me in there.
yeah,
It's just like,
yeah.
I don't want to, dude. I don't
I know,
want to.
right?
But like some of, like my best friend growing up in the Highlands who lived across the street, his dad worked there and now he works there as a machinist, and he does really well. Like the money's good. And my dad was always saying, like, you need bennies, you need a job with bennies,
Yeah,
which is how Boston people say benefits,
yeah,
right? So
yeah.
he was always like, trying to get me to take the postal exam, which I did, and stuff like that. But I don't know, I never vibed with those kind of, I don't know, but you got to keep. Sometimes I can go off the rails. You just got to keep me on track.
Same here. Um, how does music find you in growing up in Lynn?
So that's a good question too. So I mean, primarily until like high school, I primarily listened to hip hop because that's what everyone around me was listening to rap. I loved like Gangstar. That was probably my favorite. But listening to like Jammin' 94.5, as you know. So it was mostly that stuff. And then, so I was born in 85. So I think I'm a few years younger than you, but I graduated high school '03. And it wasn't until like high school, probably like 10th grade, ninth, 10th grade, was when I discovered Weezer, which was like 7 years after the Blue album came out. I finally like listened to stuff that wasn't just rap. And the Blue album, man, I was fucking obsessed with it. And I always had my disc, man, in high school.
Yeah.
Like
English?
always.
Lynn
Lynn
English?
English, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So I would walk right down the hill, and I also went to Eastern, which is closer to your town. And I used to have to walk there, which from the Highlands, it was a long walk for like, a little 12-year-old. It's
Yeah,
like, I don't know, a couple miles, a mile,
yeah,
I don't know. It was uphill both ways in the snow. I remember
yeah.
that. No.
Those were big ass hills, though.
Yeah.
They were hills.
Yeah, dude, for real. Like riding your bike, dude, having to like, if you left the Highlands,
Yeah,
you had to, ride up one of those hills coming
right.
back.
Coming
And if
back.
you
Yeah,
walked it up, you were shunned from your peers. So
yeah,
you had to pick a hill and ride up it, and none of
yeah,
them
yeah,
were. They were all steep, yeah.
yeah,
But
yeah. Of course.
yeah, man. To answer your question about music, yeah. So it was like Weezer was kind of like my gateway to
Hmm.
all that stuff, and then from there it was like, you know, I would say this is probably common for a lot of people. Like I got into like Green Day and Blink 182, which is funny because those three bands, Weezer, Green Day, and Blink, are all headlining Riot Fest this year. Those were my big three at first, and then like, well, simultaneously, dude. So I remember I went to a football game at Manning Bowl, and right across from the street was this venue, this little shithole called New World,
Oh yeah.
and my buddy who was into hardcore music, um, we were just like under the bleachers, like smoking a joint or whatever. He's like, it was like halftime during the football game or something, and he's like, "Yo, dude, we're gonna go to a hardcore show." And I was like, "What are you talking about? What?" He's like, "We're gonna go to this show. Just come with me." I was like, "All right." And Unearth was playing across
Yeah.
the street. At this point, I was still like probably mostly listening to rap,
Yeah.
but like so I went to that show and I was
Yeah.
frightened. I mean, I'm not a big guy. I'm a small guy, but I was even small. I was like 5 feet tall, maybe. So I come in and I was just like, whoa, like what is going on here? And I remember I loved like the riffs and like the breakdowns and shit, but I was like, pinned up against the back wall because I was just like, I didn't want to get like pummeled by the mosh pits and stuff that were going on. And I want to say Small Brown Bike might have played that show too, but I could be wrong about that. But I know Unearth was there, and then right around the same time, so my first job was Star Market down in downtown
Boston
Lynn.
Street or on Market Street.
Exactly. Yeah, there were two. That's right. I should have worked at Boston Street. It was way closer.
Closer,
but, I don't know if they had switched to Johnny's Foodmaster at that point, or I don't think I was old enough because Star Market hired 14-year-olds. But I think that the one that was closer didn't, or it was for some reason I had to work there, and I wanted to get a job as soon as I could. So, and I would, it's funny because there were some days you were only allowed to work as a 14-year-old. You had to go to like the VP's office and get your work permit, and like you were only allowed on school nights to work like 3 hours. And thinking back, so I used to walk there. It was like an hour to walk there. So it's like, it took me 2 hours walking back and forth just to
work
3 hours, which was my first pay. It was like $5.80 an hour, $5.75 an hour. It's just funny, how times have changed. But the first $500 I ever saved up, my dad brought me to Costco, and I bought a video camera, and it was like the little handheld one with the flip screen, So those were like kind of starting to really pop. So, and Jackass was like popular. So I would mostly just record me and my friends doing stupid shit, probably like most boys.
Yeah. Were you into those CKY videos?
I was, yeah.
I was a huge fan of those.
Yeah, those were great.
Yeah.
But my buddy who was in Spanish class was in this band called Preston. I don't know if you remember them. Mm-hmm. Before that, they were called Go 48. They were from the Merrimack Valley, but like pop punk kind of vibe. But they recruited my buddy who was in Spanish class. He sat next to me, and he was a singer. And I told him I got this video camera. He's like, dude, you got a video camera? I was like, yeah. He's like, I got a show this weekend. My band's playing. He's like, we're playing the Knights of Columbus, the one in Lynn, on the pond. And he's like, will you come to the show and record my set? And I was like, sure. So like going to that Unearth show, getting into Weezer, and like recording my buddy's band for a few shows kind of all happened around the same time. And that was all like the combination of me, then from there, getting into Piebald and Saves the Day and Taking Back Sunday and like all that stuff. And then from there, I was just, I'm still in it. So yeah. I think that answered your question, right?
Yeah. And how do you meet the guys in Piebald? Did you meet them when they were sort of starting out, or?
No. So, I mean, I was going to their show. I mean, I got into them a little later. I mean, they started when they were in high school. Yeah. In 1994. So at that point, I was like 8, 9 years old. Yeah. But and so with that, and also kind of getting into the scene a little bit later, I guess. I got into Piebald when their second or third record came out in like 2002 maybe. So, but I was always going to shows. They were playing around all the time because they were local. So, they quickly became like my favorite band ever. And then I was always like really shy, like, because I would see them talking to people and stuff, but I just like was too shy to say hello. It took me years. Eventually I, started saying hi to them, or like maybe would chat a little bit after a set or something. And at a certain point, so like when Facebook came out, I like became Facebook friends with a couple of them. But then they broke up or went on a hiatus from like 2007 or 2008 until 2016. So fast forward to 2016, now like 31 years old, and they got back together, and I was ecstatic, So I bought tickets to all their reunion shows. They did a run on the East Coast and then a run on the West Coast. And for the West Coast dates, dude, I flew out, and I had tickets for all the shows, but I decided to bring a cowbell. And I just long story short, I just showed up to their sound check basically with a cowbell and like a 12-pack of PBR, and fast forward, dude, it turned into like eventually because they liked me for whatever reason. Yeah. Also, they made me try out that day.
right.
during sound check, which is hilarious because like they weren't like looking for a cowbell
Right.
player, you know, but they were like, well, we got to make sure you can do it, man. You got to try out. And I was like, all right, dude. And I just couldn't believe they let me in.
Yeah.
You know? And I was really nervous. Probably the most nervous I've ever been was like during sound check in front of like nobody, you know.
Yeah.
I was like shaking, but
Yeah.
on the way there, like on the flight, I had a pen on my knee, just like practicing. Listen to this.
Yeah.
It's only one song. Yeah, I just listened to that one song over and over. And so I was ready for it. I was just really nervous and for whatever reason, they liked me. And eventually, well, so I just started, I was like, all right, I'm just going to do this all the time, anytime you guys play a show. And for all I knew, I didn't know they were going to keep doing stuff. For all I knew, for all they knew, that was just a one-time reunion.
Yeah, like a few shows.
Yeah. So, but then they like all of a sudden the next year they're playing Boston Calling, and I'm playing the cowbell Boston Calling opening for Tool. Converge played right before us, and then a few sets later it was Tool.
That's crazy, right?
And like Weezer played that day.
Yeah,
and, it was just like it was crazy.
Yeah,
40,000 people or something. So I just like kept showing up and playing the cowbell, and I think the funny thing was like, I just kept finding my way to the green room without credentials. Like I would just walk in during like load in time, and they'd be like, "Who are you?" And I like whoever's at the door. I was just like, "Oh, I'm with Piebald. I play the cowbell." And they'd be like, "You fucking with me?" And I'd like open up my backpack and have the cowbell. Like, all right, come on in. And then like I get to the green room, and those guys were like, "Dana, hey, what's up?" So I was pretty persistent. I wore them down with time, and eventually they're like, "You should sell our merch." And I was like, "All right, cool." So I was their merch guy, and then we got this big tour in 2020, all before everything shut down. It was like January, February 2020, opening for Dashboard Confessional. So that was when they asked me to be tour manager. I couldn't believe it, man. I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my God, because I was already like, like I was kind of just showing up. I would fly out, and I was working a corporate gig, so I had money, and like, so I didn't, it was like I would take my vacation time and just go. But like for this big tour, I was like, I don't know if they're gonna like, geez, how am I gonna do this? I didn't know if they were gonna like have
take
me.
You or,
yeah, exactly. And they
or
were
you driving your own car or whatever.
Yeah, for like a full US. It was just like, geez, how am I gonna figure this one out? And then, as I was, I think I sent him a text like, hey, like if there's anything I'll sell merch, like whatever. And then I got a call, and they're like, we want you to be tour manager. You tour manage, do merch. And yeah, it was a dream come true, man. And because I was a Dashboard fan too, forever. So that was the first time, I was doing, like, I had done like a few festivals with them and stuff, but, playing like House of Blues in Dallas, or the Fillmore in San Fran, or Stubbs in Austin, and just hitting
famous venues.
Yeah, I was just like, I took it all in, brother. Like every day I was just like, well, like I kept my cool,
Yeah.
I got to be a pro, but in my head I was just like, I cannot believe this.
Yeah. But so if you go back to so when you fly out to see them that first time, was that like the first time you sort of flew, like left this area, or did that to follow to go see music?
They pieballed again in 2010. They did a couple one-off reunion sets at Bamboozle. Do you remember that festival?
Yeah.
They would do one, like they did one in Anaheim and then one in Jersey, and I went to both of those. So the first time I like went to California was I flew out to LA and rented a car and drove down to Anaheim for that. And that was actually probably the first time I really connected with the band, like the most I had talked to them other than just saying hello. And their tour manager at the time, he like loved me. He was like creating some video content for them, and he was like, dude, you flew from Wynn for this? Because he was a mask guy. Like he put me in some video he was making and stuff like that. So, yeah.
And flying out there, you said earlier, like you were into travel, so that always been an important part for you.
Well, so. I grew up as I alluded to before, very blue collar, always had a job since I was 14. And I went to college, but like kind of just barely. Like it was,
Same here.
I
Yeah.
just went to North
Yeah.
Shore Community
I did
College.
there and I did Salem State, but
Me too.
I did nothing except DJ at WMWM and met a bunch of friends but I can't tell you anything I learned there
That's cool though.
academically.
The radio thing I always
Yeah,
wanted to
yeah,
do.
yeah. I mean, it
But
was,
I don't know. Like I always felt like I was supposed to go to college, but I fucking hated school. Like in high school, I was always skipping just as much as I could, like not be there. I wouldn't be there. When I was there, I would have my head down on the desk and I was sleeping. I was probably depressed. I don't know. I was just not engaged. I just hated being there. Um, but like, so I didn't go to college right away. I eventually so I was just always working, is my point. My first, like, I worked in restaurants forever. I just recently got out of
yeah.
that. For now, hopefully I'll stay out.
Yeah.
So my first restaurant job was Kelly's Roast Beef.
Oh, yeah. In
In
Revere or Danvers?
no, the one in Danvers. I worked there for like 6 years. Like, just started off as a cashier in high school, trying to pay for my car or whatever.
You probably sold me a couple two tree roast
Couple,
beefs.
couple two tray.
I'm one of the people who are hardcore hate Kelly's roast beef. And
Oh my God, dude, it's like crazy.
yeah,
And I get it, dude. Like,
yeah, it's different
it's
than the other ones, but
well, the quality has really gone downhill.
yeah. Oh yeah.
And the original family doesn't own it anymore,
Yeah.
and they've franchised out, and
Yeah.
just it's not
McCarthy's.
what it is. Yeah, the McCarthy's, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
From Marblehead.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I went to high school with in elementary school with the daughter, Samantha.
oh, cool.
So I
Okay,
think
yeah.
that was sort of part of it was like a tradition. We would go to the one in Revere all the time,
Oh, I mean, that's the one. But I will say, man, like when I was there, and people were talking about even back then, the quality from just over the last like 15 years has really gone downhill.
Yeah,
But even back
definitely.
then, like if it wasn't the Revere one,
Yeah. It was
people like
different. Yeah.
people hated, all the
Yeah.
others. So if
Yeah.
it because they just that beach vibe, I think, the nostalgia. But like I will tell you, man, I was one of two people in the entire company that were allowed to train people on how to slice the beef, because it was like a pretty complicated thing, and it was really easy to fuck up. Like being a grill cook or a fry cook was way easier than being like the slicer, they called it. And like I had like my schedule was kind of all over the place, but for a long time I sliced every Sunday morning. And I had regulars who would come in every Sunday when we opened because they knew that I was
That you were the
that I
guy
was
there.
yeah. So I defended Kelly's forever. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, it's I'll slice you a better sandwich than you'll get on the beach. Come on Sunday. And every time, I was proud of it, I
Yeah.
work hard.
Yeah.
But I can't even defend them anymore.
No, yeah.
You know?
I went a few weeks a couple months ago. My mother, I live down in Rentham now, down by Rhode
Oh,
Island.
okay. Okay.
And my mother's still up in Beverly, so usually if I go there, sometimes when I'm driving home, that the exit there at the Liberty Tree Mall the magnet Kelly's will pull me off the exit, and I'll go there and
Well,
eat it in my
dude,
car.
the cheese
It wasn't
fries.
good. Yeah,
The
yeah,
cheese fries are still incredible. The
yeah,
chowder's great.
yeah. The
Um,
onion rings I love there.
Great
I
onion
love
rings.
the onion
Those
rings.
are
Yeah,
handmade. Yep,
yeah,
yep,
yeah,
absolutely. So there's still some stuff and there's still some of the old school guys are still there. But like, dude, when I worked in Danvers, man, like the people who opened, because that store opened like right before I started working there,
yeah,
like the
yeah.
same year.
Right.
So they had these old school cats from the beach that worked there in the 70s that like
Yeah.
still work there.
Oh yeah.
Because Brian, I mean, there's a million crazy stories I could tell, because that place is wild, man. But Brian
Yeah.
used to really take care of people,
Yeah.
and that when it was just the one on the beach, and they were like, there was one point in time where they held the world record for most Coca-Cola
Oh
products
yeah, I
sold
remember that. Yeah.
in like a week span,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they took that record from Yankee Stadium.
Yeah.
And
That's
Yankee
fucked up, right?
Stadium took it back like, a couple weeks later. But that's just how much business they were doing. And so I've heard stories of him walking around and just handed wads of hundreds to all the crew, like, thanks for your hard work, brother. Thanks for your hard work. So, and I was very lucky to, like, be a young kid start working there and work with some of those old school guys who were out of their fucking minds. Like just, you know, if you watch the movie Waiting, a lot of that is, you know,
that was kind of,
just like never fucking with people's food ever.
Yeah.
But just the shenanigans.
Yeah.
You know,
of course.
And the camaraderie. And so they laid a really good foundation for me as someone who was a kid ready to work hard.
Yeah. Work ethic.
I didn't know what I was going to do. I wasn't good at anything other than working hard and having a good attitude, I guess. But eventually I went to college. I was just like, all right, I should go to college. I went to North Shore, the Essex Aggie campus, and I took culinary arts, and I did finish, but you know, I never wanted to be a cook. Even when I was doing that, I hated it. I skipped, like, you know, those for culinary, it's like you're in class for 6 hours, you know, because you're in the kitchen. And so you were only allowed to skip, like, I think twice a semester before you got an automatic F. And I always, every class I would take 2 days. You know, I would take, I just hated going to school always.
Yeah.
But that's a long way to get to your travel.
No, that's cool. Yeah.
But so I just always worked through my entire 20s. Never really traveled until I started, you know, kind of following Piebald around from time to time. And then eventually I worked for Pantera Bread for like a decade, and I had a really like great executive position. I was overseeing like you know, 60 locations, the Swampscott one included. And so I did that for like almost a decade, and again, I was still miserable. But so one day I left. This was 2019, and I had a bunch of money saved up. I was single, and I was like, fuck it, dude, I'm going to Europe. I always wanted to go. I never did the semester abroad. I never, you know, I'd never really left the country other than going to like Niagara Falls a couple times, which doesn't even really count, right? So I hopped on this one-way cruise ship out of Brooklyn, and it was a transatlantic over to Rome, Italy, and it was an open-ended trip, and I was over there for 4 months. I hit like almost 30 countries. And just like I was, you know, taking cruises, I was hopping on the train, I was staying in hostels. I also had a bunch of Marriott points from when I worked at Panera. So I was kind of doing a little bit of everything, like staying in hotels, hostels, and just bouncing around. And I mean, that was a game changer, you know, 4 months. And then, you know, eventually I started running out of money. I was like, I guess I'll go home. But I decided, like, you know, I left in April, and it was like August, and I was like, all right, I think I'll go home next week, you know. Or I think I did. No, I was like, I'm going to do one more cruise because I just enjoyed doing that so much. I did like a cruise, like I did the initial cruise there, and then like that same boat I hopped back on a couple months later, did a cruise like around the Greek islands, and then I did another one around like Scandinavia, one up into the Baltic. Actually, so dude, one time while I was over there, it was a goal. I was like, I got to see a show while I'm here, whether it's a comedy show or, you know, like a band. And I was in Tallinn, Estonia. I missed Unearth by 1 day. What are the odds of that? Like, I was talking to Buzz afterwards. He's like, dude, you should have told us you were there. You could have just hopped in the van. But I did see Weezer while I was over there in Switzerland. It was cool. It was incredible. Yeah. So travel's been important to me in a huge part of my life. Since then, I should say. And that was when I started the podcast. It was a travel log. It was just, I was just recording into my phone, like, almost like, you ever listen to Bill Burr's show?
Monday morning? Yeah.
That's my favorite and the first podcast I ever got into.
Yeah.
And so almost like that format, I guess, only not nearly as funny because I'm not Bill Burr. But you know, I just like, oh, I'm in Italy today, and I would just talk. And you know, I really loved doing that. So when I got home, I was like, I don't know what I want to do, but I want to keep doing this podcast thing. And that was when I came up with 2 week notice, because it was like related to leaving the work life kind of thing. So it's funny because if in hindsight, knowing what the podcast turned into, I would probably have a different name. Because if you look at the logo and the name, you have no idea it has anything to do with music, you know? But I was kind of already deep enough into it. I was like, I'm not changing it. Fuck it, you know. And I just tie the theme into it. Like I'll ask people about jobs they've had and stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, mine's named after an REM song, and I don't think I've mentioned REM once on here. One of my favorite bands, but I just don't. I don't. But I think I'm gonna have 100th episode coming up, so I think I might actually use that episode to talk about REM for the first time.
That's cool. Yeah, if you could just like talk about what maybe like how the show started, kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, like why it's called that, and
I like that
yeah,
because you've been doing this for a while.
So this is like 98 episodes. I just put the newest one out yesterday. But I wanted to start doing, it was similar because of the Bill Burr. Like I wanted to do, because these are a lot of work, and setting them up, and getting people's schedules together is hard sometimes. So I thought maybe I would do 2 interviews and then do one single one, and then do 2 interviews and then one. And it's kind of an easy schedule, and try to have them backloaded. So I'm not, because when I was doing it before, I kind of stopped it because I found myself, because I wanted to release them on Tuesdays, because records used to be released on Tuesdays, just as sort of like a nod to that. And
Love that. Yeah.
I found myself up at 11:30 at night, still recording like the intro and edit. So I think doing this different schedules is making it a little easier. And now I started doing video. I did this one I released yesterday. I released it on YouTube as well with and it's a video one with the singer for JFA. That came out really cool.
Sick, man. I'll definitely check that out. So just like we were talking about, you get it. And like the thing is with YouTube, if you're editing, like, audio is the primary thing for me. Yeah. But then if you go to do the YouTube, well, it's like a different editing session because it doesn't translate.
No.
Then if you're going to use that same audio clip, then you have to chop up the video the same.
Exactly.
But then it looks all fucked up.
Yeah. So I'm trying to, that's why I'm like, this is the first one I did was this one. And I left the audio just how it is. And then throughout the conversation, I did the same thing where, he talked about some certain skateboard. So I Googled that skateboard and found pictures, and then, kind of put those up on the screen, old flyers and stuff, and put those throughout it. But
that's cool.
If I do these single ones where I want to maybe like talk about records or something, they're 2 completely different things, the video and the audio. So I need to, but I like the Bill Burr, just him
oh, dude,
ranting.
He's the best.
I used to listen to that all the time. Zip! Recruiter. I used to fucking do that. I used to love that.
Oh man, old Freckles.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people don't know this. I mean, he was in the podcast game before Mark Maron, before Joe Rogan. I mean, and those guys are great too. I love their shows. But like, he started in 2007, and I got into it like maybe 2011 or something, but like I've listened to every one he's done. Because I went back and like caught up pretty quick because I just started binging it, and for a long time that was the only podcast I listened to.
Yeah, I listened to Rogan a lot for a while. I stopped at one point. I like when he has comedians on there.
Yes,
yes. He would have, if he had any episode with Joey Diaz or Tom,
Uncle Joey.
Uncle Joey. Hey, Joe Rogan, this cocksucker.
I'll tell you something, cocksucker.
Yeah, he's fucking.
I love him.
Yeah.
He's great, man.
Yeah. And his podcast was pretty good with
the Church of What's Happening Now with Lee Syatt, the Flying Jew. He called him.
Yeah, he's a local kid too. He's a Massachusetts kid.
Lee Syatt.
He's like a Patriots fan. I think he moved back here when the podcast ended, but I think they're doing it again now, but remotely or something. But
I didn't know that. Yeah. I was on that one for a while, and I'm the same. Like Joe Rogan, I didn't really listen to his podcast. Honestly, it was a few months ago. In between tours, and also when I'm on these tours, I drive a truck overnight a lot. So I listen to so many podcasts. But like I really became obsessed with his podcast recently. Before I would just pop in, he would have Bill Burr or Uncle Joey or whatever, and I would like hop on and listen to like those. But now I do still mostly listen to the comedy ones. Those are the best. But if he gets any that get political, I gotta tap out.
Yeah.
If or like if it's like just talking about UFC for a really long time. Yeah. But even the UFC talk, I don't like he just had one with Tom Segura, and they're talking about fighting for a while. But it was such a great episode. That show is great, man, and it's crazy the impact that it has on the world now. Like he had Bernie Sanders on there and Donald Trump and like Elon Musk and like I don't listen to those episodes personally, but it's amazing to see how because it was weird when like these political candidates would start going on like the Tonight Show. People were like, "What's that all?" But it makes sense, and now they're going on Marin had Barack Obama. That was a huge deal.
Yeah, him talking about that with like snipers on the roof. He tell his neighbors, "There's going to be a sniper on the roof." Just FYI. Why? Because I have the president coming to my house.
So Mark Maron, his podcast, the first like 200 episodes.
Oh yeah.
When it was all comedians. And he was in his garage and was just like. He was just in this really rough patch in his life.
Yeah,
had been like a legendary comic, but not only amongst comedians because he was just like down
burning
and
bridges,
out.
and he was burning bridges with a lot. Like and it's like I feel like the last 10 years has been his like apology tour, or just like having people on and being like, "All right, so before we start talking, we had a problem at the Comedy Store 30 years ago."
Yeah, totally.
Let's talk about that.
And then I love how half the time. Well, they'll either call him out and be like, "Yeah, you are an asshole." And he'll be like, "Yeah, you're right."
Yeah.
Or they'll be like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah, they have no idea. Yeah,
that's in your head, man.
Yeah.
He's like, "Oh, are we good? Are you sure?" Yeah. Those are great. Theo Vaughn is another one who that guy's awesome.
I saw him when I lived in LA, and I was going to the Comedy Store all the time.
Nice.
On Wednesday nights, they would have like, I can remember one night I saw. Yeah, like Bill Burr, Joe Rogan. I saw Pauly Shore because his mother, owned but Mark Maron. You'd see all these huge comics, and they would just do 15 minutes. I saw Joey Diaz, but I remember seeing Theo Vaughn there. He had just sort of started because this was 2015, so 10 years.
Okay.
I mean, it hadn't just started, but he was definitely unknown at that point.
Dude, so I went to the Comedy Store one time.
Yeah,
it was I flew out for a Piebald gig. And I flew in a day early because that's when I was like really into comedy, and I was like, I gotta go to the Comedy Store. And I went, and it was the main room, and it was Yakov Smirnoff.
Nice.
Oh, that guy, you know him? He's great. That guy's awesome.
Yeah.
It was him, and then Mark Maron was there, Theo Vaughn, Ali Wong, Brody Stevens, rest in peace.
Yeah.
And like, dude, Theo Vaughn, I didn't know who he was at the time.
Yeah,
I've till this day never seen anyone level the room.
Yeah.
The way he had people falling out of their fucking chairs, I've loved him ever since.
One of the first times I went there, I used to go alone, and they sat me on the side of the stage on the complete opposite of where they would walk up, and that guy Jeff Ross, the famous, if people don't know, he's the guy that does all those roasts. And he came up on stage, and immediately as he's walking up, makes eye contact with me, and I'm like, oh boy. And he picks up the mic, and I'm a big guy, and he's a big guy, and he goes, "Thanks everyone." He's like, "Before I start," he's like, "I just want to give a shout out to my personal trainer over here." And he came over and like clinked my glass. I was like, oh, I just got roasted by Jeff Ross.
What an honor.
Yeah. And Dean Del Rey, do you like him?
Yeah, I like him.
Yeah.
I don't listen to his comedy, but I love when he's on like Burr's podcast or whatever.
He has a new special out. He's never had a special out, and he just put a new one out on.
It was at the Cavern, right?
Yeah. It's actually pretty. Yeah. He's pretty funny. But I like his podcast. I don't listen to it as much, but he always has cool guests on there. And I met him outside the Comedy Store around that time because I heard him on Maron. And I think those two were like good friends at the time, and probably still are, obviously. But he seems like the coolest cat. Like you can tell he's exactly what he is. Yeah.
And he just seems like he's just got good energy, just positive.
Just into music, clothes and stuff. Yeah, he's into like a lot of different stuff.
You know what's funny? Like I feel like I've been a bad comedy fan in the last few years, in the sense like because I used to watch specials all the time, and I don't watch them anymore. I did watch the new Bill Burr one, which I don't think was his best. But I also had it on while I was driving, so it's like, maybe I just wasn't engaged, but I was just like, it was all right. There was one joke that had me howling, but it didn't make me like. I love Let It Go is probably my favorite.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the black and white one, I forget what it's called.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't watch specials anymore,
Yeah.
but I still listen to all, like, I am more of a fan of the comedy podcasts now.
Yeah, yeah.
Of them just
listen
shooting
to those
the
guys
shit.
shooting the shit. Yeah, like Joey Diaz. His
Yeah.
stand up, I can't. I've tried it and it just doesn't.
Yeah.
But him telling stories and like shitting in his neighbor's backyard, and it was if
Well, he's lived a wild life. Like, he's
yeah,
been in and out of jail and
yeah,
had a cocaine habit
yeah,
and, just like lived all
kidnapping.
over,
Yeah,
kidnapping, getting kicked out of like state. Like, he
yeah,
still can't perform in like Seattle, I think, or Canada. He
yeah,
can't go to
yeah, something
Canada.
like that. Yeah, yeah,
But yeah, those guys also shooting the shit. It's not far off, especially when they're telling road stories. It's not far off from my world,
yeah,
of
exactly.
just like stories from the road.
Yeah,
And so the other podcasts I really enjoy are like all the scene podcasts. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
sometimes I get burnt out on it. I
Right.
just need to I'm like, all right, I've just been editing for 2 days or so, but that's when I'll put on like Bill
Yeah,
Burr or Joe Rogan
yeah.
or whatever. So,
And it is.
um,
It's like hanging out with, those conversations, those funny conversations that happen.
yeah, and it's a unique job. I mean, it's hard to understand like the road, like until you do it.
Yeah,
People think it's like this glamorous life. It's not at all.
yeah, yeah,
And I do love it.
yeah, yeah,
And I'd rather, drive a truck overnight or sell merch or tour manage or whatever. Like, I'd rather do that any day of the week, than go, like I bartended for a while, actually. The Four Winds in Lynn, you know what that
yeah,
is?
yeah, yeah.
Buzz came in one day, and I was really, really good at bartending, I will say, and I loved it. And I remember Buzz he sat like right in front of where I'm making drinks, and I was fucking slammed. And he goes, "Wow, man, you're like a Tom Cruise." What's that movie? I've never not Top Gun.
Cocktail.
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 He's
Yeah,
like, "You're like Tom Cruise in Cocktail right now," and that like made my day because
yeah,
like you know what I mean.
yeah,
I felt like I was in the zone. I was just
yeah,
moving, and but you get burnt out on that, and
yeah.
maybe I'll get burnt out on touring one day,
Right.
but
Yeah,
who knows?
yeah. And when in traveling early like that, like going to Europe, and then just traveling around the country now. Do you think growing up in a place like Lynn, where there is just like a lot of cultures mixing, especially in school, prepares you for being out in the world like that?
Oh my God, yeah! I just got this overwhelming like chills and goosebumps because yeah, I have such hometown pride. I think
Yeah,
everyone does.
yeah, yeah. Of
There's
course.
no place like home, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah, like I said, I wasn't the best student growing up, didn't do well in school. But what I learned growing up, especially in the Highlands in particular, which I live on the other side of the city now, but I mean, that taught me so much that you can't learn in a classroom. And I didn't even realize like like I didn't come across like people like racist people until I got older. Like going to I went to summer camp at Camp Rotary. It's in Boxford, and like I was on like a scholarship, but like it was a lot of rich kids, and I remember like other kids being like, "Oh, there's a black kid here this week," and he was
yeah,
my friend. I went
yeah,
with him,
yeah, yeah,
and I was like, "What the fuck was that? Like,
yeah.
what
Why
did he
you?
just say?"
Yeah,
I just didn't because growing up, yeah, I mean, going to the public schools in Lynn, there's just as many white people as there's such a healthy mix. It's so diverse. And to your point, not only that is like growing up in the hood, man, like I know right away when I'm somewhere that is
yeah,
sketchy. I
yeah,
you
yeah,
know know a
yeah,
hood when I see one.
yeah,
And
yeah,
every major city and a lot of these even smaller cities
yeah,
and towns are rugged, man.
yeah, yeah,
And so if growing up in Lynn has done everything for my travels. Even when I was over in Europe, all of
yeah,
a sudden you're
yeah,
walking around like, I don't know, Copenhagen or something,
yeah,
and you're like, oh, I shouldn't be in this area.
yeah.
This is like I'm gonna go the other way.
Right.
It's
Yeah,
just because you don't know you're a
yeah,
foreigner. It's just like
yeah,
you're just like excited to travel, and that's how people get into some sketchy
yeah,
situations.
yeah, yeah. I
But you got
remember.
to have your head on a swivel, dude. You
Yeah,
have to.
yeah. Yeah, I've driven across the country a bunch of times, and I'm like a Route 66 guy, and I used to like seeing some of
Nice.
the highlights on that thing. And I remember, and this was before GPS and stuff, and I had a book, and I
Yeah.
wanted to see there's this specific bridge in East St. Louis. And I was like, oh, St. Louis, East St. Louis, that's probably pretty cool there.
St. Louis is rugged, dude.
Yeah, I mean, St. Louis proper is. I have a dear friend there that I always visit when I go there, and he's taken me like around the city, and it's a really cool city. He's like a architecture guy, so he knows about every building, and he's a baseball guy like me, so
Oh,
we'd
cool.
go to Cardinals games, and but when I went to East St. Louis, I never found this bridge, but I remember I went down some street, and it was literally like a trash can on. It was like the middle of a fucking Tuesday, like at 11 in the morning, but there's a cop drove past me and was essentially looking at me like, "So why are you down here?"
Oh shit.
So
Wrong side of town,
yeah,
homie.
yeah. But same thing.
Damn.
I knew immediately when I go. I was like, "Yeah, this is. I'm not going to keep looking where this
Right.
fucking bridge is."
Yeah, you have just like a heightened awareness, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah,
But, and same thing with like, yeah, just being cultured and I mean, when I say being cultured, yeah, I guess if you, it's also kind of laughable, like being from Lynn. It is, and it also is like, also isn't, like when I haven't been to like, third world countries or stuff like that, but even just traveling to, whether it's other places around the country or, over in Europe or whatever, it does really kind of help your perspective in general. You know, this I think it's really good to travel. Like, my parents again, they're old school, but like they don't they go to like New Hampshire
yeah,
and they
yeah.
go to
That's like
like
yeah,
Las
yeah.
Vegas, and that
Right.
they haven't been
Florida,
anywhere.
yeah. There's like the three.
Yeah,
That's like the New England people that don't, which no knock on, some people just don't want to travel and they're fine with
right.
those three things. But I always try to encourage younger people or just people that, even who say they can't afford it, you can travel and you really should. It's an important thing to just see stuff, even if it's just in this country, There's plenty of good
Totally. I
stuff.
mean, this country is so big, dude.
Yeah, yeah,
It's crazy, and that's the thing. Like, why Europe, I think, is such a popular travel destination,
yeah.
because you can, it's not even as big, or what? Is it small? Like, I'm just talking like Eastern Europe,
Right,
right?
right. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like not even as big as the United States.
Yeah.
Texas would cover most of the
I know.
most of those
Yeah, yeah.
countries.
Yeah.
So it's like it's in each state is almost like its own little country in a lot of ways, or at least regions. But like when you go to like Florida, you're in Florida. When you go to Texas, you're in Texas. They have certain feels. And then like, yeah, or even you could even say like the Northeast, right? Like New England, New York, down to like DC. Like if you zoom out, a lot of us are the same. Like
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Philly.
Yeah.
When I go to Philly, automatically I love it and loved it from day one. I go there a lot, and because I feel like I'm in Boston, and just in the way people are and the way they carry themselves, and then like you got like what the desert area like New Mexico, Arizona, some of Texas, and you got like the Pacific Northwest. It's almost like their own little countries,
Yeah.
really, in a lot
Right.
of ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I know. I haven't been up to the Pacific Northwest, and that's an area I'm dying to go to, or like up in Montana and the Dakotas. I definitely need to
Yeah.
get up there.
So I've been to almost every state. I have not. Those are three. I have not been to Montana or
Yeah.
the Dakotas
Okay. Yeah.
or Alaska or Hawaii, but
Yeah.
that might be it. I think I've been all
Yeah.
everywhere else, I think.
I think I'm at like 38 or something like that, but yeah.
But yeah, there's so much like because a lot of people they're like, I can't travel. Like I get it. Like you got to work, you got kids, you
Yeah.
got, but you just right here, or maybe I don't have a passport, whatever it is. If you're Uncle Joey and you're not allowed to leave the country, but there's so much in this country. There's so much to see, and it's rad. And on the road, oftentimes it's just you're in, you see a venue, you see a hotel, and you're out. But when I get some time, or when you do have time, sometimes you're just fucking tired and you need to just chill. But I try to get out when I can, you know. It's those are always my favorite days on the road, you know.
Yeah. And do you do more like just merch stuff, or do you do tour managing with any other artists?
So I tour managed Piebald and recently started tour managing for Unearth.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, like Buzz and Trevor recruited me
Yeah.
for a couple gigs last year, and then they just asked me to. Well, they actually, I was so bummed out. So I just did this tour with this band Poppy,
Yeah.
and
Oh, yeah,
like
while Unearth was on tour.
yeah, I was committed to that from like I had been committed since like, but what. Right now it's May. That tour just ended, but I had been committed since like September.
Yeah.
And then Boys Night Out hit me up, asked me to tour manage them, and that tour was at the same time. And then, but Unearth hit me up, and they asked me to tour manage them for the sick tour with Machine Head in Flames, just like sick U.S. tour. And I was like, oh my God, I wish I could do it. But then they just hit me up for there's some dates later in the year that aren't announced yet. That so I'm gonna do a run with them for that. Nice. So I've tour managed, I guess those two bands, but I've toured with Thrice, the Front Bottoms, Bayside. I'm about to go out with Bayside.
Yeah.
Alkaline Trio.
Oh, nice.
And a few other bands. But so for those bands, Hot Rod Circuit is another one. Yeah. For those bands, it's I'm usually driving a box truck overnight, like I'll have like all the production, like lights and backline and everything. Yeah. And I sell merch usually. I usually do both.
Yeah.
It's kind of like working overtime. Yeah. I'll just they'll have a merch person on the bus that is like the main merch person. But, when you're playing, the Wiltern in LA or Stubbs in Austin or something, they need a second seller and I'll hop in.
Just one person there.
Yeah. And but the tips are great. I make more doing that than I do driving a truck, which they both pay well, but not the money I was making in the corporate world, but right. I'm much happier. And when I'm hopping in and doing double duty, like if I just drove from fucking Phoenix to LA and then I got to sell merch like that night, it sucks. Yeah. But like when you get handed all these cash tips and it's like, all right, this is why you do this, because you're going to have a month off and you're going to need this to carry you to the next store. Yeah, of course. You know what I mean? Yeah.
What would you tell people out there is the worst thing you can do to people selling merch?
Oh God.
I feel like there's so many of the. I did merch briefly for this jazz funk band. I did like 3 or 4 shows with them. But I just remember, people coming up and saying, "Hey, can you sell me this for this?" I'm like, "No, these guys are making $300 tonight, and I haven't sold anything yet on this." Like, no.
Yeah,
$10.
That's an amazing question that I've never been asked. You might have opened up a can of worms, but I'm happy to get into this. So one, you can't heckle, or haggle is the word, not heckle. Yeah. There's no negotiation. Like that doesn't happen too often, right. From my experience. But it's like at least once a night, someone's like, "Oh, what if I buy like this, and this? Can I get it for like half off?" It's like, dude, there's a line of fucking 50 people, 100 people, like hundreds of people sometimes. Like these tours, I have a line. The lines are insane. Yeah, which is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, especially post COVID too. Like when bands had 2-3 years not making this merch money, like a band like Unearth who counts on that.
Totally, and the other thing is like no one's buying records anymore. It's just a different world. The music industry has changed. Yeah. And that's why it's great for fans, but that's why there's so many tours. Everyone's always on tour because that's the only way that they can like sustain. They have to tour if they want to keep doing it, period. Yeah. So merch is a big deal, and it's really a beautiful thing to see, like having a massive line every night on a sold out show, because that's what keeps the band going. That's what keeps me employed. And it does more than people realize. So, but like, you also gotta, it's like, I'm not this is the price tag. This is what it costs. Right. Yeah. So to answer your question of like what not to do, what to do is just be quick. Just show up, know what you want, and like get out. Like you just waited in that line for 30 minutes. Yeah. So you like trying to talk to me and like haggle with me. Yeah. you're holding up everything, dude. I am slammed right now.
Yeah, because you also got to fucking drive that night.
Well, yes, but
you want to get through this line and then get on the fucking road.
Well, 100%. But even that aside, like, I'm gonna be there till like midnight or 1, no matter what. If I'm selling for like a headliner at like a House of Blues, when I'm selling for like Piebald or like Unearth, those are maybe smaller shows, or we're opening. So like, if there's no one at my table, you want to come up and shoot the shit with me, I love that. Yeah. Especially like when someone comes up to me to tell me how much they love Piebald and like how much the band means to them, and that they want to show me a picture of them at a show 20 years ago. If there's nobody behind you, absolutely, I'm so I get stoked on that. Yeah. But like the biggest thing is, dude, when people come up, and I get a long line, they just stood in this fucking line for 30 minutes and they don't know what they want. Yeah. It's I can feel my blood like boiling, or they're like, they don't know what size they are.
Right. Yeah.
I'm just like,
how big is the 2XL? Do you think it would fit me?
Is it unisex? Yes. Right. do they run to size? Yes. Right. What I do understand though, if you're paying $30-$40 for a shirt,
of course.
Like if they're like, can I try it on? I'm like, no. But what do you don't know, medium or large? I'll grab them both. You can hold it up, right? And then I'll hold up the other one. I can deal with that. Yeah. But when you do that, and then they turn around to their boyfriend or girlfriend,
what do you think?
And they're like, and then they're like, and then they go back and they're like, maybe I want that one instead. And I'm just like, there was several times on this last tour, and I'm always very polite and professional, but on this last, it was one show in particular in LA, and it was like every single person, it felt like, just didn't know what they wanted, didn't know their size. And I can't tell you how many times I was like, there is a really long line behind you. Yeah. And I don't like to do this, but the other annoying thing is like, and I feel bad sometimes, these kids, like, they're literally kids sometimes, like teenagers, and they're swiping their card and they get declined. They're like, what? Can I run it again? I'm like, go ahead, sure. It's not going to fucking, and then they get declined again. And then they'll pull out their phone. They're like, hold on, I just need to switch my transfer money. And I'm just like, first of all, like, maybe you shouldn't spend all your money on this, but I'm not going to say that, obviously. But like, I'll just be like, do you need more time? You want to just stand step aside, let me know when you're ready, which is annoying, but I can deal with that. Like, do you mind just stepping aside? All right, just give me a tap when you're ready. And I'm like, next, so those are the biggest pet peeves.
And you in that last band you were on wasn't that was a pop, like a more pop band?
So they're actually like, it's weird to call them metalcore, because when you think metalcore, you think Unearth, right? Right. Yeah. But they are like, I guess, what metalcore is considered now. Yeah. Like this singer Poppy, she's on a Knocked Loose song.
Oh, okay.
And nice. Knocked Loose is like maybe the biggest hardcore band right now.
Right now, yeah.
So like that's cool, and there's like some cool songs. I got into it, but that was my first time working for a band that I wasn't already a massive fan of.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Like, how was that experience?
I've just been so lucky. Again, I'm getting goosebumps, man. Like, like, I've also toured with the Story So Far. They're huge now. Like they've, they do runs with Blink-182, and or same Alkaline Trio. Like, when the Story So Far, so they were the first band that I toured with that was not Piebald. Yeah. And do you know what Bobnet is?
No.
So Bobnet is like it's like a classified job, like almost like the classified job section on Craigslist. If you go to the website, it kind of looks archaic, like a Craigslist. Yeah. And it's old school, and it's just for roadies. Oh, okay. So it's like guitar techs and drum techs and monitor people, front house sound engineers and stuff like that. And when I did that tour with Piebald opening for Dashboard Confessional, their tour manager's name, this guy, legend, dude. Yeah. His name, Jack Funk. Which I don't know if that's his real name. It's none of my business. You know what I'm saying? But the guy, like, he tour managed Rush for like 10 years. Oh, wow. And like I heard he like dated Stevie Nicks. I don't know if that's true, but
Right.
like the guy was so rad, man. And so yeah, every day I walk by Mr. Funk, give him this, this salute. And on the last day of the tour, I was like, hey man, like thanks for having us and all that stuff. Like, I want to tour. Piebald's not full time. Do you have any advice for me into like getting into this stuff? And he told me about BobNet, and I got on there. Now, this can be anybody. It could be Dashboard Confessional. It could be Ricky Martin. It could be whatever, right?
Yeah.
But you don't know. It's anonymous. Like they just put up the jobs, and that's all you see.
Yeah.
So the Dashboard tour ends, and then like 2 weeks later, the pandemic happens.
Yeah.
And then but I signed up for BobNet right away, and then I'm on it for like 2 years. Never applied for anything, but there wasn't much up there because nobody was touring. And then things started opening back up. And I saw this post for a box truck driver. That's all it said. Box truck driver needed for full US on these dates. And I applied, and I got a call back, and he's like, hey, this is Dan Rose from The Story So Far. I just was responding to your application. I was like, no fucking way. Like, what are the odds?
Yeah.
And that tour, like, I don't know if you know these bands, but it was The Story So Far, Joyce Manor, who is like my favorite band, Mom Jeans, and Microwave. And it was just like, I don't know if I believe in like meant to be,
right? But
the odds of that happening.
Yeah.
And then the merch guy for The Story So Far on that tour, he also does Bayside and Alkaline Trio, right? Oh, nice. So I get in with Bayside. He recruited me because whatever from that first tour. And then through Bayside, I met this tour manager. I call him the Doctor. Yeah. Matt Wilson. He tour manages and does front of house sound for the Front Bottoms and Thrice and Bayside and Alkaline Trio. So it's like, one thing just led to another, and I kind of it all started with Piebald. Yeah. And then that BobNet gig that I got with The Story So Far. Yeah. And I ended up doing another gig with them last summer. It was A Day to Remember, The Story So Far, 4 Years Strong, Military Gun, Pain of Truth, and Scowl. Yeah. So it was just this massive tour. Awesome. Oh, so awesome.
I love them. Yeah, I just got their new record.
I don't know if you, their new record's great. It's great. Yeah. And I don't know if you like Pain of Truth. They're like, just
I don't know them. Yeah.
There's Long Island. So the singer's brother, he has two brothers that were in like King Nine. Yeah. And I'm forgetting the other one. And one of them is in I Am the Avalanche now, who I'm going to see tomorrow. Nice. So it's just like all connected, Yeah, yeah. But that was a massive tour. I mean, we had Red Rocks and and like all these pavilions and in some arenas. Like I'm like looking up at the ceiling at like Stanley Cup banners, and it's just like this is so fucking cool, man. Yeah, yeah. Especially for a band like Scowl, that was a big tour for them. Yeah, yeah. So I forget what your question was. What would you ask?
About
you asked about merch.
Yeah,
yeah,
merch,
I don't know.
Then, yeah.
But it cool.
Seems like it all comes full circle for you, man. Like the DIY thing, like I said at the beginning, you sort of built this whole life of yours by yourself, and that's cool. And that
thank you.
That's a better, well, not better, but just that's an admirable way to just go about your life, And,
thanks, man. I guess
if it keeps you happy, and you're as long as it's fun and you love to do it, then why wouldn't you?
In a sense, it's kind of like DIY in its weird way. Like just the way I operate, I do it my own way for sure. It's not like any traditional thing. I mean, if I had a wife and kids, I'd probably still be at fucking Panera Bread or something, But it's been really cool, and like even just saying hello to the Piebald guys, 20 years ago was like a big deal. Never mind, fast forward, I was in Travis's wedding. He's the singer. I was in his wedding a couple years ago, and these guys have become like my best friends. Or even like, like hanging with Buzz and Trevor and like going out with the Unearth guys. It's just like, and bands like that, just mean so much to me, like a Piebald or Unearth in particular. Those bands, like, if I'm not already committed to another tour, I'm gonna be there for those guys, because those are like just the hometown, ride or die kind of, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And if they're artists that you've, loved and respected forever, and then you actually get to work with them, it's just like this podcast, like having the guy from JFA on the other day. I messaged him on a Monday, just out of the blue. I don't know him. We both follow each other on Instagram, and he got back to me in like 15 minutes, sent me his phone number, and said, "Yeah, actually, message me here. I don't check this often." Wrote him back. He wrote me right back and said, "How about this Thursday?" And the whole thing was planned in like 40 minutes.
That's the best.
That's fucking rad. And this guy is a guy I've loved his music since I was 14. So 41 fucking years.
That's
whatever. So, and then just getting to fucking chat with this guy. It was like, to me, that's what it's all about. I love that.
That's incredible, man. And I'm sure, you can relate to this. Like, there are people who I've had on the podcast where that's maybe the only time I ever talk to them, and that's fine. I'm super stoked to do it. Yeah. But a lot of them you become friends with. And you stay in touch. Maybe you just text once in a while, or maybe you see them at a show or go to their show. And one thing this was completely unplanned, and I really didn't wrap my head around it till like probably the other day. But it was like, so I'm doing this touring thing and doing the podcast thing. They really go hand in hand because like going on tours have helped me get these podcast guests.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And then podcast guests have helped me get tours.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's like, wow, it's like a beautiful thing that completely separate. Like I said, I started because I was in Europe, like just fucking around.
Talking about traveling. And,
And fast forward, it's like, whoa, this is like become like my identity in a way, if that makes sense. So
no, definitely.
And then this the podcast leading to the new podcast.
Yeah.
And how it's just how it all, like you said, full circle.
Yeah.
I just feel very grateful and like honored. Even like I said, like Poppy, when I did that tour, that was my first time working with a band I wasn't already a massive fan of, but I still dug it.
Yeah.
But like even that, I still like, there are days where I'm just like, oh my God, I want to sleep in my bed. This is a long tour. Like, fucking truck breaks down 30 minutes after leaving the Boston House of Blues, and I still got to get to Baltimore, and it turns into a 15-hour trek. Yeah, those days are awful.
Right.
but like even in those moments, I do my very best to stay positive, because it's like, dude, you could be doing this, could be way worse.
Yeah, you could be.
It's easy to get like
the kitchen tonight.
Yeah, or it could be fucking, like whatever. Life could be way worse. There's a lot worse that you could be in for situations. So I try to always keep that perspective and just like always remind myself, this is a dream come true. Like 20 years ago, you would not have believed that you're doing this, and you just, it would be. So you know what I'm trying to say. I just try to keep it glass half full kind of thing, which can be hard sometimes, but.
To be humble with stuff,
That too. Yeah, that's crucial, man. And I think in life, dude, like, if you want to get somewhere, if you have a goal, like trying to get a certain job or in a certain circle, like half the battle is just being like positive.
Yeah.
And like, and having like, being like likable, being a good hang.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
Don't be a punisher, I guess.
Yeah.
And just, just do the right things, you know.
Like Buzz. Who doesn't like hanging out with that guy?
He's the best. Yeah, we must have so many other mutual friends.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like you were just saying, we should definitely. I imagine we'll stay in touch after this. Especially with the mutuals.
Absolutely, man.
Living in the same area, we'll have to.
Whether we cross paths or even if sometimes I like to bounce stuff off of other podcasters sometimes, just because it's like,
of course, man.
You get it, and like maybe it's like, oh, how do you do this or whatever. So hit me up anytime.
Same here.
Do you still going to shows at all?
Yeah, here and there. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm gonna see. I don't know. Do you know I Am the Avalanche?
No.
You know the movie Life, Vinny Caruana? So it's Vinny's other band.
Okay.
So I'm going to go see them in Providence tomorrow. And then I'm actually going up to Montreal because they're playing a festival with like Drug Church. You like them?
Yeah, I fucking love Drug Church.
Yeah.
Dude, love that band.
Piebald.
I got to see them.
Dude, they're great. Piebald, we just played this festival in Las Vegas called Best Friends Forever. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah,
like all these like old school emo bands.
Yeah.
But they also had like some younger bands like Drug Church and Mannequin Pussy and stuff.
Yeah.
And Drug Church played right after Piebald.
Yeah.
And the singer, Patrick, he went on stage, and in between songs, he gave like a 1.5 minute speech about how rad Piebald is.
Oh, wow. Oh,
it was
nice.
so cool. I
That's
got a little
awesome.
video of it. It was so cool. So like right after I ran out back as they were loading their trailer, and it was like, yo, I had I was like, anybody want a shirt or anything? You know, like, so we like made fast friends with them, and they were like, dude, Piebald is the only band that we all, like every single one of us mutually loves.
Agrees
like,
on.
let's do a tour together sometime. I don't know if it'll ever actually happen.
That would be rad, huh?
But those moments on the road are you know, that's what it's all about, you know? Yeah, totally.
He's got great lyrics too, that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the new record, Prude.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, thanks for doing this, man.
Yeah, dude. Of course.
I really appreciate it. And this was a lot of fun. So,
thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
Can I do the plug again real quick?
Yeah. I was just gonna say, where can people find your
stuff? Once again, dude, Christian, it's been cool chatting with you. Honored to be on your show. Keep doing this. And so yeah, check out my podcast. There's 2 Week Notice, where I interview one-on-one with, you know, Dustin from Thrice, or Chris from Dashboard, or fucking Buzz has been on 4 times because he's the funniest person you could ever have. So, you know, people in our hardcore punk emo world, the scene. And then the new podcast, as I talked about in the beginning, Live Free or DIY. And you know, you can follow me on Instagram or whatever. You can put a link in the thing if you want.
I will.
Yeah, cool, man.
Awesome. You have a good
I got to plug Piebald.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
New record coming out, I think, early next year. But
nice.
It's done.
It is. Yeah.
They brought me into the studio. I laid down a cowbell track.
Nice. Who's putting that record out?
Iodine Recordings.
Oh, nice. Oh,
so
awesome.
Iodine they recently signed a deal with Iodine, and we are not only putting out the new record, but we're working on represses. So we just put out a repress of "We Are the Only Friends We Have," which has not been available on vinyl forever.
Right.
And then Venetian Blinds is next, and then I think Lemons. So a couple more represses and new music, and we got a couple festivals and stuff like that. So if you like Piebald, follow them on Instagram.
Yeah, definitely.
At Piebald.
That's a great band.
Hell yeah.
Awesome, man.
Well, thank you, Christian.
Yeah, you enjoy your night, man, and I will talk to you soon.
All right, brother.
All right,
Peace.
Cheers.